From my last video, you can tell that I joined the military, and for a while I was in training. Then I moved to Belgium. While in Belgium, I got pregnant. So, yeah, I'm pregnant with twins, y'all. Twins. Can you believe it? Like, who the fuck? Who would have thought that little old me will be having twins? Identical monodied twins at that. So monodied basically means that they're sharing one placenta. They both are in different separate sacs, but they're sharing one placenta, which, being at the fact that they're in separate sacs, makes it a little less high risk, but I still am high risk. So yeah, my pregnancy story. So I'm not gonna start off with what happened, how it happened, who it happened with. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna give that person the time of the day. We're gonna start off with the time that I went to the hospital to confirm that I was. So I went to the hospital, and I was in Belgium, so I went to a Belgian hospital, and I went to the hospital, and I was in, yes, I went to the hospital, went to triage or whatever, just to, I already knew I was, because I had taken like 15 tests, but I needed to get a confirmation from a doctor. So I went there, and then the lady, she does a, I forgot what it's called, but they use a long stick, and they put the jelly on when you're very early on in your pregnancy. They put the little jelly on it, and they stick it up in your vagina. And so she's like, oh, you know, I didn't want to look at the screen because I just couldn't believe it was crazy time for me. I didn't want to believe it, so I wasn't even looking at the screen. I'm looking straight ahead. And so she's like, there's two. And I started laughing. I'm like, you're lying. And I guess she got offended because, you know, different cultures and stuff like that. So she might have gotten offended. She's like, no, I'm not lying. She was like, look. And there was two sacs. Y'all, I just started crying and laughing at the same time because I just couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe it. And I literally just, she was like, hey, you're done, type of thing. And she took a picture. She, of course, took a sonogram picture. And I'm putting on my clothes because they're very, like, in America, you know, you get to look, they give you like a gown or something. No, they had me spread out, like, not even like a cover on me or anything like that. So it was very awkward. So I put on my clothes and I just kind of like run out of the hospital. I'm like, oh my god. And I start calling my sisters. I'm like, somebody please pick up, because I know in the States it was early for me being in Belgium, and we're 6 or 7 hours apart. I want to say 7 hours apart. And so I'm like, somebody please pick up, somebody please pick up. I was like fucking going crazy, like somebody has to pick up. So I start calling my sisters, none of them pick up. So I want to say Gaia picked up at one point, and I'm like, I'm crying. I'm like, there's two of them, and Gaia was like, what? And she's like, you're lying. I'm like, I know there's two of them. And so I'm crying, I'm hysterical, so I'm like, I'll call you when I get to my room. I can't talk about it right now. And so I start calming down, you know, I get in the car, I start calming down, and I'm just driving, and I'm like, oh my god. And so Jamie calls me back, because I had called Jamie, my best friend, and I'm like, I had to pull over. I literally had to pull over because I was like, you're not gonna believe this. And so I show her the sonogram picture, and she just started, like, I want to say she started crying. She either started laughing or crying or both. But we're both like not believing it. And it was crazy. And then I told my sisters, and everybody was just like, to this day I'm still like, and I'm 32 weeks pregnant, so it's still like kind of like crazy to me that I'm having identical monodied girls. Did I mention that they were girls? Yeah, monodied girls. So I'm just going to go through a few of the symptoms that I've been having and kind of the things that I've been kind of going through throughout this journey that I am going through right now. So beginning, I was like really like, I was like, this is simple. Like I was like 10 weeks. I was like, this is nothing. I'm expecting bad nausea. I'm expecting morning sickness. And I was like, oh, this is nothing. Week 11, week 12, my nausea went on like super mode. It just went crazy. Like I'm talking about, it was no morning sickness. I don't know why it's called morning sickness, honestly. It was an everyday 4 or 5 times a day. Like it was bad. It was really, really bad. And it was just bad. And so I had bad morning sickness, or bad all day sickness is what I like to call it. And I didn't really, throughout this whole thing, I haven't really had like cravings. You know, people say, well, I want pickles and this and that. I haven't really had any of that. I just eat what I eat, and that's about it. Like, it's nothing big. But so yeah, so that happened. And then I came down with hypokalemia, which basically means low potassium. So too low potassium is a bad thing, and too high of potassium is a bad thing as well. So I had really low potassium. So it was just one day I was feeling really sick. Like I know the difference between like pregnancy sick and then like regular sick, and I was feeling sick, like just horrible. I couldn't even go to work that day. So I called my first sergeant, and I was like, I'm about to go to the hospital. So I go into the hospital. I go see my OB, and I'm like, I'm not feeling well. He was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna admit you just so we can keep an eye on you, because I'm having twins, and so many bad things can happen, especially with the type that I'm having. And so he's like, I'm just gonna admit you. And so he admits me, and they do blood work, and they notice that my potassium was at like a 1 point something. Was it 1 or was it 2? It was either 1.7. It was 2 point something. It was like 2.3 or 2.4. It was really low. It was really low, and so they started putting IVs in me, and it was painful. It was so painful. If you ever had potassium pumped through your like pure potassium, not concentrated potassium pumped through your veins, then you know how painful and how tough it can be. It just burns your veins. And here I am by myself in Belgium. My family's in the States, in Florida, and I'm by myself. I have no one, and so it was just such a rough time for me. And at one point they had to put in a catheter in my neck, because I wasn't getting enough, and I wasn't retaining enough potassium. So literally both my necks had catheters in them at one point. And so that was horrible. I was in the hospital for like a month. From there, they moved me to Germany for a few days so they can medevac me to the States, Washington, D.C., or to be specific, Maryland. And yeah, in regards to symptoms, I haven't really had much except for nausea, and during the last few, like maybe past month, I've had a really bad pelvic pain. It's just been bad to the point where, like, if I'm walking and I get it, I literally have to stop walking and try to like take a breath and just sit down for a second, because it's just that painful. Around 31, I'm 32 weeks now, and so around 30 weeks, I started to have preterm labor, signs of preterm labor. And so I went to triage, and I had to get a set of steroid shots, which was horrible, because they give them to you in your butt cheeks, and it was just really bad. And then they gave me something else. I forgot what it was called, but so the steroids was basically, so if I was to give birth early, their lungs would be pretty developed. And the other shot was basically to slow down my contractions, because at one point my contractions started to be 1 to 2 minutes apart, which was crazy insane to me, because they weren't bad. They were bad, but I was just my expectations for them were way higher than what they were. So I was like, okay, I'm just preparing myself for the worst. And so I had to get shots. They had to start monitoring me more. And so yeah, that happened, and I was seeing my appointments with my prenatal assessment doctor, which is basically a high risk doctor, where at one point like once a week, and then they started becoming every 2 weeks, and then they started seeing, they started to, they wanted to start like basically measuring and monitoring the blood flow in the baby bees, was it baby bee? Baby bee's brain, which is surprisingly my most active baby. And so they wanted to start monitoring that. So my appointments literally became twice a week, every week, and it was just overwhelming. But thankfully, I was able to make it home to Florida so that I could give birth here. And yeah, so basically that is my 1 to 32 week update. Not really update because you guys didn't know. It's like my story. I guess it's like my pregnancy story, I guess. Please don't ask about the father. Because I am the father. Just kidding. Anyways, if you guys have any other questions, if you guys have any specific questions, first of all, shout out to my twin moms out there. Please write down or comment any advice that you have for me. Any military moms, single military moms out there, please write down advice for me because I'm terrified of going back active duty, not reserves, active duty with 2 newborns. Like, comment, and subscribe. Click that bell button so you can get notifications on whenever I post a video. So yeah, thank you guys for watching.
Pick me up before 6. Got a bitch with another bitch. We ain't tripping cause we all hit. Yeah, we all with the fuck shit. Yeah, we all with the